Hey everyone, I wanted to go through kind of an interesting hand I had in a low stake cash game. So this is a $25 buy-in. I am hero and the cutoff down here. I had recently doubled up, um, doing set over two pair all in. And I just thought I had an interesting hand that I wanted to share with everybody. So I am going to block off the seat one big blinds hand for the video because I think it's kind of interesting to go through the thought process without having seen their cards, which is of course what I would deal with at the table. Now you can see that there was one limp in early position, and I also limped with ace deuce on the cutoff. I think sometimes I might raise here, but at these low levels, I'm not really trying to build a big pot with ace deuce suited. I think limping here is just fine a lot of the time. I also had just kind of sat down at the table recently, and I didn't really have a read on any of my opponents, so I wasn't really considering, trying to steal the pot or build a big pot in position against any particular opponent at this point. So I do limp, and everybody else folds to the big blind who checks. So this is obviously a great flop for me. I've hit the essentially pretty close to the nut flush on the flop, and unfortunately, it's a really small pot. So I'm thinking right away about how I can build the biggest pot and what my opponent's bets are going to be telling me. So I have the benefit of late position, so I'm going to get to see what my opponents do before me, obviously. And I'm thinking, already I'm thinking before any action has taken place, am I going to raise, or if it's checked to me, do I bet here? And fortunately, the big blind does lead out with a half pot size bet, which is great because the pot is small and I want someone to have a hand here so that I can get paid off. The early limper folds, and in this position, I'm thinking there's probably three main types of hands he's going to have in this spot. And I'm not talking about specific hand types, I'm talking about strategies, I should say. So he's either purely bluffing, which I think in this spot is actually not a terrible idea. Being in the big blind like he is, I think it's possible he has a lot of hands here that are actually kind of strong. Like he could have 6-7, he could have 4-5. He maybe even could have checked like a set of, like a pocket pair, and maybe has a set of 4s, 5s, or 7s, a small percentage of the time. And of course, he could have a pair and a spade or something like that. Those are all, if you're looking about the perspectives of the types of hands that he's going to bet with here, someone in late position who also limped, I have to consider that he could have those types of hands. So a bluff in this spot does make a lot of sense. He also, of course, could have a lot of those hands. And then another possibility is he flopped a flush, flopped a straight. Maybe he has like a overpair in a small percent of the time, like eights or something. But really, I'm thinking, if he's going to lead out here, I think he has something a lot of the time, and I think he has a bluff a small percentage of the time. So what I like to do here is simply call and see what he does on the turn to determine if I can read the strength of his hand a little bit better. I feel like a raise here just gets a bluffer to fold a lot of the time, and it also maybe makes a pair, two pair, or a set even fold. And I actually don't really want them to fold at this point. The pot is small, and I'm not really happy with winning $1.25. And so I do elect to call. And the turn comes another spade, which I think is really unfortunate for my hand a lot of the time. Of course, if he did have two pair or a set, I think he slows down big time here. I think another bet would be really silly. I think it would essentially be a bluff. If he is bluffing, then, this is actually kind of a good card for me because he can continue his bluff, acting as if he has, the ace of spades, the king of spades, even the six of spades. Not that anybody's thinking about that really. But yeah, I think it's great for him to bluff at again, potentially, since all I did was call on the flop. And so when he does bet out, I'm thinking, well, what is he going to do with each of those types of hands when I raise here? Because the pot is still really small. I haven't shown any strength. And I think if I were to raise, it actually looks potentially weak or strong, actually. So it could be, I could raise here and it looks bluffy, or I could raise here and it looks strong. It really depends on the opponent and how much of their thinking player. In this spot, if he has two pair or a set or something, then he's just really being kind of crazy. I think it's a small chance of that. I think it's essentially a bluff. And so, if he's bluffing, I could call and see what he does on the river. But there's a few cards I don't want to see. I don't want to see another spade. I don't want to see the board pair and potentially be beat by a full house or quads. And so I'm thinking, this is probably the time to start putting some money into the pot. If he has a king of spades, queen of spades, I can actually get paid off potentially here. And so I elect to raise a small amount just to start building the pot. Now, I didn't expect him to 4-bet me. And so now I'm starting to think, okay, if he's willing to 4-bet me here, I think it's a very small chance of a bluff. Not impossible, but very small. I eliminate two pairs, three of a kind, anything like that. I'm pretty much putting him on the king of spades, maybe the queen or jack of spades if he's really wild. I didn't really consider the possibility of a straight flush for some reason, but that's also a possibility. He could have the six of spades, of course. And so I'm thinking at this point, wrongfully, that I should raise. And I think the reason that I thought I should raise is because we're at a low stakes cash game table. There's a lot of maniacs here who are going to overplay their hands. And again, I don't want to see the board pair on the river. I don't want to see another spade. So I'm basically sitting here salivating, thinking if I raise here, he has a king of spades or another high spade, he might just shove. These are crazy players at these stakes. So I elect to raise, and now of course if he's bluffing, I think he folds here, which I don't think he's bluffing at this point anyway. I think if he has a king of spades, he might either shove or just call and see what the river brings. He could also get away from this. I'm showing a lot of strength by 5-betting here. So at this point, the pot is pretty big. I'm not going to be upset if he folds. I would consider it still a pretty good result. It was a limped pot, started out at just a little over $1 or something like that, or maybe 81 cents or something. And so we built a pretty big pot with me having the ace-high flush, and I wouldn't be upset with that. But he does call. And at this point, I'm starting to think, okay, if he is calling here, he has probably one of 3 or 4 different hands. He either has like the king, queen, or jack of spades, or he actually legitimately has a 6 of spades. And I didn't really think about the 6 of spades up until this point very much. Now the river comes an offsuit jack, doesn't really change anything, and he shoves his remaining short stack into the pot. So I'm getting 4-1 to call with the second best hand, second nut flush, I should say. And of course, I'm going to call at these stakes. There's no way I'm going to be convinced that he's got a 6 of spades at this point. So I do call, and he does show the 6 of spades. He has the big blind hand, just a random, offsuit connectors. Of course, I didn't think of it nearly enough on the turn, and that actually lost me, one buy-in, which kind of sucks, but honestly, it's kind of an interesting spot where I didn't consider the worst case scenario, and I actually didn't even consider what the best move was, no matter what he had. So if I go back to the turn, and I want to see if I can convince you guys about something here. So when he raises, so he bets and I raise him. When he raises me here, I think it really, looking back now, I think it eliminates almost every possible hand he has, except the king of spades and the 6 of spades. And the reason I leave the king of spades in there is really just because, again, we're playing low stakes. People are a little crazy. He could be representing the ace of spades or the 6 of spades, but not actually have it. I think a queen of spades is pretty dubious to raise here, unless you're doing it as a bluff. Maybe you think you're blocking king, queen of spades or something, but, given that we all limped pre-flop, it's probably unlikely anyway. But, given the 3 types of hands he could have here, which is a pure bluff, or a hand that's beating me, or the king of spades, I think the raise is bad. If he's got a pure bluff, I should actually be just calling his bet here and seeing a river and seeing if he'll bet again. If he does have the king of spades, I should probably slow down because I don't want him to fold yet. I want to see if he will call a river bet. And then if he does have the six of spades, all I'm doing by raising again is losing more money. So, of course, I'm also thinking this is low stakes cash games. I'm not taking 5 minutes to think through all this stuff. I'm at this point, I'm still salivating at the thought of getting his entire stack. And so I think that's why I raised. I was just thinking, build a pot, build a pot, build a pot. Um, but yeah, I think those three scenarios are probably the most likely things to consider in that spot. And it does tell me I made some mistakes in this spot. Certainly, didn't really consider the six of spades at all, and I also didn't play it very well, even if he had only the king of spades or a bluff. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, it's a small. I lost one buy-in, but I think I learned a lot from it. And I'd be pretty curious to see if anybody else had any interesting thoughts about this. Maybe you think that I should have done something different on the flop. Maybe you think it was obvious that I should have folded on the river. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what people think. And so, yeah, if you found this video interesting or insightful, please leave a like. Find it, if you can find yourself a comment on the bottom, I think I can probably respond to that. Maybe we can have an interesting discussion. Thank you. Bye.